Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Grandmaster Games. We continue the series with a game from another chess great, Alexander Alekhine. The customary quote: chess first of all teaches you to be objective, coming from Alekhine himself. Widely considered as one of the greatest chess players of all time and a favorite of many, including myself. Born in Moscow, Russia, Alekhine learned to play chess at around age 6 or 7 when he was introduced to it by his mother and siblings. He started playing over-the-board tournaments around the age of 15. By the age of 22, he was among the strongest chess players in the world and won most of the tournaments in the 1920s. Later, Alekhine left Soviet Russia, emigrating to France, which he represented after 1925. In 1927, he became the 4th world chess champion after defeating Jose Raul Capablanca in the championship match. He defended his world chess champion title against the Russian-born German grandmaster F.M. Boguljubov in 1929 and again in 1934. He was defeated by the Dutch grandmaster Max Euwe in the 1935 World Championship match. However, he regained his crown in the 1937 rematch. Alekhine died in 1946 and is the only world chess champion to have died while holding the title. His chess brilliance extended to every aspect of the board and beyond. He is best known for his tactical prowess and ability to produce combinations in complex situations. Yet, Alekhine was superior in quiet positions and endgames as well. His influence in theory is undeniable, too. Several opening variations bear his name, with the most notable being Alekhine's defense, 1e4, knight f6. Alekhine wrote more than 20 books on chess, and some of them are regularly mentioned among the best chess books of all time, including My Best Games of Chess, Volumes 1 and 2 by Alexander Alekhine. He was a brilliant tactician who excelled in all areas of the game. He beat the world's best during a golden age of chess and also served as the precursor to the Soviet school of chess that more or less officially began with Mikhail Botvinnik. Garry Kasparov once noted about how he admired the refinement of Alekhine's ideas, and I tried as far as possible to imitate his furious attacking style with its sudden and thunderous sacrifices. And then Max Euwe observed of Alekhine, he is a poet who creates a work of art out of something which would hardly inspire another man to send home a picture postcard. Now, some interesting thoughts from the master himself in an article, New Chess King Ruled by Fancy, by Leon Wexelstein in the New York Times, 11th December 1927. To find out from Alekhine the ingredients that go into the making of genius in chess was not easy. As well, try to learn what makes for a Heifetz, an Einstein, a Walt Whitman, a Tolstoy, or a Tunney. If genius could be readily analyzed, then genius could be made to order, and genius cannot be made to order. It is there or it isn't. Among other questions asked were, does, for instance, mathematical ability play a part? What are the roles apportioned to fancy, to memory, to prudence? To which Alekhine responded, mathematical ability, he said, not at all. Dr. Emanuel Lasker is the only one who, so far as I know, has any. I haven't myself, or if anything, very mediocre ability in mathematics. I don't think it counts in chess. What does? Well, fancy is one, and a flair for abstract reasoning is another. Alekhine laughed a little. Anyway, he said, don't place too much weight on the inheritance. You might be a brilliant player even if no one in the train of your family had ever seen a chessboard. He was pacing furiously across the room, digging his hands in his pockets, drawing them out, digging them in again, fumbling with them. At last he halted. A thought, it seemed, had come to him. He was at pains to capture it in words before it flew away. He wrinkled his forehead and finally racked it out of him. You know, he said, a curious struggle takes place within me when I play chess. A struggle between fantasy on one side and sheer prudence on the other. You see, too much fancy or too much fantasy is not so good. It may sweep you off completely. It must be tamed by good cold sense. The two pull in opposite directions, yet they must both be gratified. So I sort of keep compromising all the time, giving vent to first one, then to the other. However, in my case, fantasy dominates. It is more intense in me than the other thing, more relentless. I suppose I'll have to put up with it somehow. A link to the article can be found in the video description if you would like to read the entirety of Alekhine's interesting dialogue. Now, in 1926, an international chess master tournament was organized and held at the Grand Hotel Panhas in the Semmering Pass south of Vienna, Austria, from March 7th to the 29th. The event was organized by the Russian-French Grandmaster Osip Bernstein, who invited 18 players to participate in the round-robin tournament. Among those invited were the very best masters of the day, including Alexander Alekhine, Akiba Rubinstein, Aaron Nemzovich, Siegbert Tarrasch, Milan Vidmar, Savely Tartakover, Richard Reti, and Rudolf Spielmann. And you can see a picture of the participants together in the video here as well. This was game 68 of the event in round 8. Alekhine's opponent was Akiba Rubinstein, the Polish Grandmaster, who was one of the strongest players of the early 20th century. Alright then, let's get into the moves of the game. Akiba Rubinstein with the white pieces and Alexander Alekhine with the black. And Rubinstein began the game with d4 and Alekhine responded knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and with b6 we have the Queen's Indian defense. The opening is a solid defense to the Queen's pawn game, namely 1d4. b6 increases Black's control over the central light squares e4 and d5 by preparing to fianchetto the Queen's bishop, with the opening deriving its name from this maneuver. As in the other Indian defenses, Black attempts to control the center with pieces in hypermodern style instead of occupying it with pawns in classical style. By playing knight f3 here, White sidesteps the Nimzo-Indian defense that arises after knight c3 and bishop b4. The Queen's Indian is regarded as the sister opening of the Nimzo-Indian, since both openings aim to impede White's efforts to gain full control of the center by playing e4. Together, they are a well-respected response to d4. g3 was played by Rubinstein in the game, which is the main line of the Queen's Indian defense. Bishop b7 is the classical or old main line for Black and was played frequently through the 1970s and was played by Alekhine in this game as well. This line usually continues bishop g2, bishop e7, castling, knight c3, knight e4, queen c2, knight takes on c3, and queen takes on c3, where White carries the opening initiative with some spatial advantage. However, Black has no weaknesses and can look for counterplay with moves such as c5, f5, or bishop e4. These lines are well known for their drawish tendencies, and bishop b7 on the fourth move by black is often employed as a drawing weapon. White has tried various deviations from the main line in an attempt to unbalance the play. These include bishop d2 instead of a queen c2 here. Instead of knight c3, d5 with the continuation e takes on d5 and knight h4, threatening to regain the pawn on d5 or to play knight f5. And knight c3 here, postponing castling in favor of preparing action in the center with the d5 and e4 pawn thrusts. After the 1970s, bishop a6 has become the modern line, however, instead of bishop b7. White can defend the pawn at c4 with a piece by playing knight d2, queen a4, queen c2 or queen b3. But these moves all diminish control of d4, making c5 an effective reply for black. Therefore, b3 is white's most common response. Black continues with bishop b4 check, and here knight d2 is a mistake for white after bishop c3, rook b1 and bishop b7, threatening bishop e4. Therefore, after bishop b4 check, the best move for white is bishop d2. However, after bishop e7, bishop g2 and c6, black is ready to play d5. Thus, white usually plays bishop c3 to clear the d2 square, and after d5, white can play in two ways. The first being knight d2, knight d7, castling, rook e1 and c5, where black has achieved their thematic pawn break before white, and the resulting position after e4, d takes on e4, knight takes on e4 is equal. Therefore, the main line after d5 continues knight e5, and since black does not want white to maintain this knight on a strong central outpost, play continues knight d7, knight takes on d7, knight takes on d7, knight d2, castling, rook c8 and e4. By diverting the black knight on move 9, it is now white who has achieved their central pawn break first. The effect of black's check, bishop b4 check on the fifth move, has been to lure white's bishop to c3, where it blocks the c file. This, the current main line of the Queen's Indian, is considered equal by theory and became a frequent guest in Grandmaster practice in the 1980s. After b3, a common alternative to bishop b4 check for black is bishop b7, where play continues with bishop g2, bishop b4 check now, bishop d2 and a5. When white plays knight c3, black will exchange bishop for knight in order to enhance his control over the central light squares e4 and d5, and play on the queen side with moves such as a4 and b5. Other possibilities for black after b3 include d5 and b5. More recently, several grandmasters, including Magnus Carlsen, have played queen c2 after bishop a6. The idea is to allow black's counter thrust c5. The main line running bishop b7, bishop g2 and c5. The fashion is for white to sacrifice a pawn with d5, gaining active play. This idea has scored well for white, and new ideas have been cropping up since 2008. The queen c2 lines had previously scored poorly for white according to the English grandmaster John Michael Eames. After g3, a less common third option is bishop b4 check, which aims to exchange the less useful dark squared bishop, though this line tends to leave black with a slightly passive position. And besides g3, other lines include a3, also called the Petrosian variation. White intends to follow up with knight c3 and e4, building a large pawn center. Black usually responds by contesting the e4 square with bishop b7 and d5. This variation was often used by Garry Kasparov early in his career. Instead of a3, knight c3 is another option for white, where black can respond with a couple of options, the first being bishop b7, after which a3 became the more common move order to reach the Petrosian system by the mid-1980s. And bishop g5 is an older line which gives black good equalizing chances after h6, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3, knight h5, e3, knight takes on g3, h takes on g3, and bishop g7. After bishop g5, if bishop e7 by black, white can play e3 or queen c2. After knight c3 by white, black can also respond with bishop b4, which is a Queen's Indian and Nimzo-Indian common line where white can play bishop g5 and black can play bishop b7, and play can continue with e3, h6 and bishop h4. Or after bishop g5, black can play h6 immediately with bishop h4, bishop b7 and e3. And instead of bishop b7, black can also go with g5, bishop g3, knight e4 and queen c2. The resulting position here was heavily played and analyzed in the 1980s. After bishop b4 by black, another option for white is e3 with bishop b7 and bishop d3, another common line in the Queen's Indian and Nimzo-Indian defense, also known as the three knights variation of the Nimzo-Indian defense. After bishop b4, Queen b3 is yet another option for white, where black usually follows up with c5. And then instead of g3, e3 is the Spassky system, preparing to develop the king's bishop and castle king side, was also a favorite of Tigran Petrosian. This apparently quiet development may lead to complex middle game play. Black usually replies bishop b7, then play may continue bishop d3, d5 and castling, or knight c3 and bishop b4, transposing into the Nimzo-Indian defense. And then lastly, bishop f4 is the Miles variation, which simply develops the bishop to a good square. Despite some success by its originator, this idea has never been popular. Returning to the game, g3 was played by Rubinstein and Alekhine played bishop b7, bishop g2 and bishop b4 check, knight d2, castling and castling. Play continued with d5 by Alekhine striking at the center, a3 gaining a tempo over the bishop, as such bishop e7. Exchanging the bishop here after bishop takes on d2 instead gives white the initiative with a better position after knight takes on d2. So bishop e7, b4 and c5. Stockfish, however, recommends developing the queen's knight to d2 here. However, Alekhine chose for the pawn break, which is a space gaining move and limits white's spatial advantage in turn. B takes on c5, b takes on c5, and now d takes on c5 by Rubinstein, which is a mistake, giving black a slight edge. Better for white was rook b1, bringing the rook to the open file and attacking the loose bishop on b7. D takes on c5, on the other hand, weakens the center for white. Alekhine continued with bishop takes on c5, which puts the dark squared bishop on a more active square. However, according to Stockfish, this is an inaccuracy, and knight d7 instead continues the initiative for black. But bishop takes on c5 by Alekhine. However, bishop b2 by Rubinstein, which is yet another inaccuracy, better being rook b1 yet again. With the sample continuation, queen e7, knight e5, rook c8, bishop b2, knight c6, knight d3, bishop d4, bishop takes on d4, knight takes on d4, e3, knight f5, queen b3 and rook c7 with an equal game. However, bishop b2 was played by Rubinstein in the game, and Alekhine completed development of his minor pieces with knight d7, knight e5, knight takes on e5, bishop takes on e5 and knight g4, where rook c8 was also playable for black, developing the queen's rook over to the open file and getting it off the white bishop's light squared diagonal. But knight g4 by Alekhine, where black carries a small edge of around half a pawn's worth. Bishop c3, rook b8 and rook b1, which is an inaccuracy, and better was knight b3 instead. Alright, you can pause the video here if you would like to spot the best move for black. d4 by Alekhine, using the mobility of his pawn center and opening up the position. And Rubinstein made a mistake here with rook takes on b7, where better was a bishop b4 with an equal game. But with rook takes on b7, black gets an advantage of over a pawn's worth, and Alekhine continued with rook takes on b7. Bishop takes on b7 by Rubinstein, yet another mistake, doubling the advantage for black. Better was yet again bishop b4, which keeps black's advantage in check. But bishop takes on b7 by Rubinstein, going for some more smorgasbord, apparently fascinated with the exchanges on b7. And here Alekhine played the exciting knight takes on f2, where d takes on c3 is also good and even better for black. But knight takes on f2 with advantage to black, and king takes on f2, which is another inaccuracy by Rubinstein, better being bishop a5, which offers the most resistance by white. A sample continuation being bishop a5, knight takes on d1, bishop takes on d8, d3 discovered check, e3, knight takes on e3, bishop c7, knight d5 discovered check, king g2, knight takes on c7, knight b3, bishop e7, bishop e4, and rook b8, with an endgame where black will be up a couple of pawns and plenty of attacking chances against white's isolated pawns. But after king takes on f2, black's advantage grows to over 3 pawns. So now comes d takes on c3 with a discovered check, and e3, another inaccuracy, better being king g2. White has a losing position either way at this point. So e3 by Rubinstein, and now c takes on d2 with almost 4 pawns of advantage to black. King e2, queen b8, bishop f3, rook d8, Alekhine mobilizing his remaining forces with ease. Queen b1, Rubinstein offering the exchange of the ladies, and Alekhine very wisely declined this with queen d6, since it's better for black to keep the queens on board to press on his advantage. a4, moving the pawn from a compromised square, and f5 by black, advancing towards the exposed position of white's king. And white only has defensive moves left at this point. As such, rook d1, blockading the passed pawn. Bishop b4 by Alekhine, protecting his asset. Queen c2, queen c5, king f2, a5, bishop e2, g5, and here Rubinstein blundered with bishop d3. Queen b2 is the recommended move by Stockfish. With bishop d3, however, black's advantage jumps to over 9 pawns, and Alekhine found the best move with f4, which is crushing for white, exploiting the pin on the white e-pawn. And it was at this point Rubinstein resigned the game. So there we go, a famous classical game showcasing Alekhine's fierce and imaginative attacking style. Hope you enjoyed the game and the video. Shout out to fellow streamer Skwerly for gifting a sub on my Twitch stream 2 weeks ago, emptywavefunction with 1 gifted sub, LadyTyraLOL with a sub. LadyTyra is from the Netherlands and a beginner in chess, and she's doing a fine job of playing well and learning. MainstreamPepe with a sub is also a beginner level player, originally from Spain. RockyMtnChess and fellow streamer Farraway for continuing their subs. And then NikolaStojsin and karmadumpster, the top cheerers with 1000 bits each. Distant 187 at second with 500 bits. Fellow streamer and YouTuber Chess Poems at third with 40 bits 2 weeks ago. Parmenides1 for continuing his sub with a tier 2 subscription last week. Bishopinthecornerpocket for continuing his sub. Karmadumpster and fellow streamer Walkerboy for continuing their subs. And then simontwitchh, the top cheerer with 1500 bits last week. RockyMtnChess at second with 300 bits and ginarook at third with 101 bits last week. Thank you very much for the kind support, everyone. Much appreciated. Alright, till next time, take care and stay safe.